I don't like the intelligence establishment. People say it's necessary. I say, if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be involved in geopolitics, absolutely. You need to have good information. If you don't have good information, how can you make decisions? Does that mean that the leadership in our country has good information? The answer is absolutely not. Okay? Every time there's something that needs to be, objectively, insightfully reported so that the people who run the country are supposed to be able to make good decisions, they failed.
Welcome back to the Collapse Life podcast. I'm Zahra Sethna, your host. Last week, we were thrilled to introduce you to William Banzai, the legendary artist whose work has become famous through the news site Zero Hedge. If something is happening in the world, you can rest assured Banzai has a take on it. In fact, he's so prolific that we didn't even have enough time to cover everything we wanted to talk about in just one episode of this podcast. So today we have part 2 of our discussion. Be sure to watch the first half if you haven't already, and please like and subscribe to Collapse Life to help fuel our mission. So without further ado, I'm happy to welcome William Banzai back to Collapse Life. Nice to see you again, Bill.
Good morning, Zara. Nice to see you again. It's morning here and it's evening there. Okay, we're not fooling around. It's true.
Thanks so much for coming
I'm
back.
happy to be here. Hi, everybody. We're back. Was there something else you wanted to say about why we're back, or shall I just?
No, we'll get into it. Basically, there are a bunch of themes that really stand out in your work, and I think that some of those are very clear to some people, but maybe less clear to others. So I wanted to have you back to talk about some of those most salient themes and kind of what they mean to you and why they recur so often in your work. So let's start with something from some of your most recent.
Let's just one way. Go ahead. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. So we had our first session, and now I'm wearing different clothes, and you're wearing different clothes. So everybody will understand in case things get mixed up. After we had our first session, I said to myself, we didn't really get into the content. There's some things that, it's impossible to cover everything there's thousands of pictures, but there are themes running through. And it's not like I planned those themes. These are just things that this has been the reality that we've been facing now for over a decade that I've been doing this now. I've been doing it for almost 15 years. And we're going to cover some of those, you and I. Okay. I said, here's a couple of ideas, and you made a list, and we're going to cover them. So here we are. And so people know just what the background is. We're sitting here. It's the third week in August. The primary is going on, the Democratic primary. And we're watching that. And there are some things that are in the themes that we were going to discuss that are basically this week in your face. We're looking at, we're staring at it. We've had an incredible summer. For me to say it's been an incredible summer, I've led an interesting life, but things have happened that, it's you just can't say I've seen everything. You just cannot say you've seen everything.
Things keep surprising you.
Things just keep happening, and that's kind of frightening because of the other things that are going around the world. And we have a tendency, just like happened during the interwar period, okay, before World War II, which I've read about extensively for different reasons. People had a tendency to normalize events that clearly were not normal. That's how they coped. They just said, well, okay, this is normal. And then they tried to sweep it away and forget about that even happened. Yeah. And I think everybody should constantly remind themselves that take a look, go back at what's happened in the last 6 weeks, because it's still unraveling now. You look every morning, I fear looking at the screen in the morning at Zero Hedge, where I look at, just to figure out what's going on, there are things that can just blow up in our faces. The one when people ask me, what's the one book that people should read covering this period? You know what I say? I say, Nicholas Taleb's Black Swan. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read the first, read the introduction, and you'll see all these things that we think are normal, that are not normal. Okay? And what's the next thing that's going to happen that's the Black Swan? Because if this stuff that we're saying is normal, which is not normal, when the big kahuna comes again, what's going to happen? And there are all kinds of potential areas, And so now we're in the middle of listening to, reading about the platform that's being proposed under this new administration that people are being told they need to go and support. And we're all hearing about how normal basically price controls and central planning is. Okay? And that's the picture that the two pictures that I made. I consider myself, I'm not an armchair historian. I'm an expert on this because I lived. Okay? I wasn't there when this was basically how everything was run. I was there immediately after the wall came down, and I saw what happened. I saw hundreds of shops that literally, because I had to go and find food, that looked like this. Okay? That, and everybody's saying, well, that's not going to happen. We're not going to, it's like we don't have time here to discuss the history, because that's where you wind up. The minute you say the government should be interfering in prices. Now, people will say, well, look at China. I say, you know something? We're not Chinese. We're not China. Okay? It's incredible. Okay, I'm not passing judgment on how China is run. I'm just saying that if anybody has the ability to try to get to grips with what's going on by looking at the data, which is really, there's you got all kinds of arguments about what is the data and is it reliable. And one of the big problems when you have a gigantic economy and people are trying to plan, that's what central planning is. Prices, instead of using a market mechanism, is you're going to wind up here if you don't know what you're doing, and if figures are being made up, and that's the big battle that you're facing. And now these people are saying, "Oh, this is what we're going to do," and we know they're incompetent. So how could they possibly even, make a valiant effort of trying to implement this kind of thing again and say, and telling the grocery store, "Here's the prices you need to set." It's impossible. Yet we're being told, that this is something that we should be looking at. I'm shaking my head and saying, what the heck is going on here? And unfortunately, there are so many, when I talk about socialism, I'm not even going to say communism, because communism is something that has all kinds of emotional connotations. We try to be more objective and talk about socialism, which is basically a collective governmental means of controlling more. And we have a generation, maybe two generations, I have children, who've been screwed by, we're going to get into the next part of this, okay? We're going to get into the themes now. I'm not just floating around it. Who have been screwed, okay? Literally, can use a stronger word, by the system. And the way they've been taken advantage of is they were told to do what we did: go to school, get a degree, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to, you may not like it, we're going to spoon feed it to you, but you're going to be a useful widget, and you're going to do what you do, and you're going to make your contribution to society, and this is how you're going to be able to buy a house and start a family. These people are looking at that and saying, that's not what happened. You call this capitalism? That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Okay, there's got to be a better way. I went, 10 years ago, I started, when we went through the next part of this, which is financialization and, financial parasitism, I started thinking about this and saying to myself, okay, now I saw what happened, in the former Soviet Union, and I went around preaching about market capitalism. Not really preaching, because there were people whose job it was to preach. But if someone asked me, pardon me, Mr. Can you please explain this to me? I would tell them, why markets, work, and how we regulate markets. We don't regulate markets to set prices and make everybody more equal. We regulate markets to make sure that there's a level playing field and that no one is taking advantage and becoming a monopolist or this or that, even though there are plenty of monopolists running around. But that's the exercise. We try to control that. We try to have a situation where the market is setting prices and the information that's coming out of the market. Well, obviously, half the country now is looking at this and thinking that doesn't work. Okay. Yeah. And some of them are basically so, when you're really down at the bottom, I don't know, somewhere in Baltimore, South Chicago or wherever, and no one cares about your problems. You don't even want to hear about this. You don't care about this. It doesn't mean anything to you. But then there are other kids who went to, who are going to elite universities or, because they're the ones that think about this. People who go to, community college or whatever, and really just trying to get a job, they're being brainwashed.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I can understand why a lot of young people are disillusioned by, being sold on the American dream, which no longer exists. But in its place, what they've embraced as their ideology is what you termed as woke totalitarianism.
Yeah, well, it's good that we're discussing this so people get the context of my pictures and understand what I'm saying. When I say woke totalitarianism, I had to, I see this phrase woke and I say, what is this? It's like every time, because look at me, I got a gray beard. It's like when things come out like that, it's not like I'm, following what's going on in trends and this and that. And I know what people, woke, of course, I use that word all the time. No, I have to look at it and figure out what is meant and then try to cogitate over it, try to figure out what's actually going on here. Mm-hmm. I made the first picture of Adolf Hitler with a rainbow mustache 10 years ago at least. It's back there in my archives, which I told you are chronological. What was I thinking, okay, when I did that? It's when I first saw evidence that things that go under this banner of wokeism, and I wasn't even using that term at that point. I just saw, I felt we're being forced on people who didn't want to have that forced on. Okay? Mm-hmm. They weren't being thrown in the rainbow jail. They were being told that in their private lives, in their family affairs, they need to do things a certain way. And I said, what is totalitarianism? Totalitarianism is when the government, okay, it's the collective, whatever. When the majority is basically telling the minority, you have absolutely no privacy. Mm-hmm. We're in everything. We're going to tell you how you need to do this and that. And if you don't follow the party line, we're going to pass a law. And, initially they'll say, well, we're going to keep you away from that decision. We're not going to tell you what your kids are thinking when they're in class at school. Basically, when they come to school, they're our property, not yours. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what happens here is none of your business. Whatever. I mean, it's like it goes on and on. I'm not isolating that, saying that's the one issue. It's not just that. There are a whole bunch of issues. People around the rest of the world aren't doing that. We're doing that. in our country. Okay, we're the ones that are we're waving rainbow flags over our consulates and embassies. People ask you, what is that about? I say it because, like for when I do tours with lots of different people. I do it with lots of Americans, but I do it with other people. I do it with people from India. The prerequisite is they need to be people who speak English. Even Russians, Germans, European. People ask me, what is that about? And I say, I'm glad you're asking that because I can't tell you what that's about. I think it's insanity, Anyway, so here we are. And I don't know where we're gonna wind up, but I just want to say that I think as much as I think that the corrupt old coot that we're being told is our president, I don't like the Biden family, but that's not what this is about. I'm just going to say I'm appalled by the way he has been treated now by his own people. Okay, if that's how your own people treat you. And so we've watched the old man show up and make his endorsement on the first evening, which I'm being told is not a very, very, very impressive time slot to get. In other words, no one cares about you. Come in, right. Bye-bye. How we got to this point, as far as I'm concerned, is not a paradigm of democracy. That's all I'm going to say. That's not a paradigm. That kind of backroom dailyism style of running the Democratic Party. There's always been a machine. They call themselves a machine. Okay?
Right.
That's what happened to him.
It's increasingly clear that no matter what party is in power or no matter what party is running, the outcomes are pretty much going to be the same. You might hear different words being spoken or different colors being shown, but pretty much they're all, I think you would frame them all as the war party, the neocon tribe.
Or the uniparty. The uniparty. Because when I say uniparty instead of saying neocon, because, when someone says neocon, for the ordinary person on the street, this is a research project they're never going to do. Mm-hmm. I know, because when I heard the word neocon, I thought, it takes you a while to figure out, okay, what exactly do we mean by neocon, neoconservative? Like, who are these people? What are they? What's their agenda? It's like no one who is just an ordinary person has time to consider this and try to figure out what's going on. Although they're experiencing things and they have a vague awareness of things that are going on outside of the borders of our country, okay? To expect them all to be able to dope it out when they're dealing with inflation and trying to put food on the table and blah, blah, blah. They want to, it's a daunting task. And so it's one of the reasons why I do these pictures. When we were chatting, I said the Middle East was an area that I read about, was interested in. Central Asia in particular, I've always been interested in. I actually was at one point collecting rare books and maps of Central Asia because that's where the Great Game. I was interested in the Great Game. If anybody wants to know, get interested in the Great Game, they should read Peter Hopkirk's book. It talks about the British and the Russians in Central Asia. Yeah. Anyway, there were pieces of the puzzle, and I looked at 9/11 when it happened because I knew people who died at 9/11, and I'm a New Yorker, and I was trying to figure, and I was just saying, why are we doing this thing in Iraq when we should really be looking over there? And why did we let the guy get away right away on horseback when we, what the heck happened there? And now all of a sudden we have something called the Patriot Act, and we all have to bend over, and what's going on with that, and it's sort of like, even though I think I said in the last episode how much I dislike the Cheney family, even though I didn't like what was going on, I think many people didn't like what was going on. People felt that something happened and there needed to be a correction, so that wasn't going to happen anymore. Mm-hmm. And they took advantage of it. And then all of a sudden we have the big one, okay? What's the big one? The financial crisis, which leads us into our next subject, financialization, right? And parasite finance, which was really what started this whole thing. Okay, so Matt Taibbi, to his credit, came up with this vampire squid, very descriptive, He has a way with words, I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
And but I know when he wrote that article, because I know some people that he was talking to, he was a neophyte. He was really not a neocon, a neophyte. He was, in other words, he was someone who was not from the finance industry, who was trying to get a grip on what was going on. And to his credit, he honed in on Goldman Sachs, and that's why there were so many pictures that I did. He came up with this vampire squid. I said, okay, I'm going to take that. I'm going to run with that. Yeah. And so then I did like, at least 100 pictures of different personalities who have all basically disappeared. Here we are over 10 years later. I don't know where they're sipping, pina coladas somewhere on the beach. But, back then they were the villains that we were looking at every day, right? Every day the villains and they were villains as far as I'm concerned. So I decided, okay, I'm going to make pictures that make fun of these people. That was an example. I took, because if you go back and you look on the internet at images, you can see that the old scientific watercolor prints, or they would do I'm not sure how they would do this because I'm not an expert on printing processes. You would think I would be, but beautiful watercolor style, renderings of, if you were going to be Charles Darwin, you needed to be someone who could draw. And I would just take those drawings and play around with them. And there he is, Lloyd Blankfein, who was the president of CEO of Goldman Sachs, who really incensed a lot of people because, being told one thing when it's absolutely another thing was really, that is what irks people. Don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining outside. Yeah. It's sort of like, oh, we had nothing to do with this. We were just basically, of course you had something to do with it. God, you were able to get out before everybody else. It's like that Margin Call film, which I think is the best film that was done. So that's what that's about. Okay, here's another one. What I want to say, this is my content. That is my photograph that I took of the Federal Reserve Bank walking around downtown with my camera. I had that image because that's not an image, that perspective is not an image that they're going to use in the Wall Street Journal looking at the building that way. Anyway, I took it, and then I took the tentacles and produced this. And this is like one of my best. I can't say what my best are. People, it's when I still post these things, people say that's definitely one of your best. And I don't even say anything when people say that now because I say, I don't know what my best is anymore. But
it's a perfect embodiment of parasitic finance for sure.
Yeah, it is. It's dark and, and it's sort of like, particularly in the very beginning, because one of my problems with this whole notion of parasitic finance and financialization and the negative effects of all that is that it's just so complicated and abstract that there's no way ordinary people can, understand, not because they're stupid, but because they don't have the time to try to figure out what does this Federal Reserve Bank do. And I know I don't consider myself dumb. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world, but I can tell you I went through my whole life really not pausing and saying, everybody wants to see what's the interest rate. Can I buy my apartment cheaper? Can I buy a house? That's as far as they go. They don't get any further than that. No one stops to ask, how does this work? What's, and the thing that irks me, and I think it irks many other people, is when someone says that's too complicated. You're not going to understand it. I say, oh really? Yeah. Oh really? That's the way to get me going. When someone says this is too complicated for you to understand, okay, let's see. You think I can't find the right book to read to figure out what's going on my own, And it's like at that point in time, when a lot of very smart people were spending more time in the comments sections of Zero Hedge. I don't even know where you can look at those anymore, whether there's an archive somewhere online, but very interesting discussions were going on amidst the chaos, because there was chaos too, in those comment threads. But very interesting discussions going on amongst people who were deeply involved, much more than me. I mean, I'm just someone who's a lawyer, I'm not the one who's actually at the computer screen doing the trades, It's the people who are the traders who are talking about, who really understand. It was then when I first understood for the first time. I always thought the bond market's boring, and then I understood to myself, Eureka, I understand what's going on now. This bond market, why, and that's what I started doing these pictures, because I said to myself, no one is going to read this stuff.
Yeah.
There may be people out there who want to try to share this over the Thanksgiving turkey or wherever they meet other people. It's sort of like when you go to people to discuss a subject like this, either they're just going to block it out and say, forget it. I don't, this is like, or they're not going to like what they're hearing. I don't know. But there are some people who really want to try to understand what's going on, but they don't, it's like, it's not easy. And so I started doing these pictures, and I've always said, I'm not copywriting my work. First of all, a lot of my work is fair use, so I'm taking other pictures and revising them, just like.
Yeah.
And everybody, I said, take the pictures and do what you want. Just don't start selling them, because then I'm going to get annoyed that someone's profiting off of my work. Yeah. Take the pictures and do whatever you need to do with them. Make people laugh, because when you get people to laugh, that is a method of rapport. Okay, that's a way that you can open people up to something intriguing, and they'll listen. Yeah. And they'll laugh. It's sort of like, don't take this too seriously. You're laughing, this and that, but then get people thinking.
Yeah, there's a deeper message beneath that.
So doing pictures like this with, I don't have my reading glasses up, but I know that when I did this Titanic, I went and studied all the pictures. There aren't a lot that were the pictures of the crew, the ship, with the Titanic, because everybody was making comparisons to the financial markets being one big gigantic Titanic, which is the folly of human infallibility, right? We can control everything. We're the Federal Reserve Bank, and that's why I started making pictures of that. It's like, there's the guy who's the captain, and the guy, the people, the ones who really should be in the picture is the guy who designed the ship, the people who, thought they could make an unsinkable ship. And we all know what happened with the Titanic. So this was really this was a great metaphor. A lot of people understood. I did a whole series of, there was one where I took the Titanic and I took Lower Manhattan and put it on top of the ship. Because everybody knows what it doesn't actually go on. Everybody thinks, oh, Wall Street, that's Lower Manhattan. That's where it's all happening. It's not really happening there anymore. It's a metaphor. It's either the deals are being done midtown and then all the trading is going on. It's in the ether. It's in the internet, right? But people who are the ordinary person on the street thinks of Wall Street, thinks of the New York Stock Exchange, which is another thing, which is just a room full of computer servers. Anyway, it's a big show. That's why I was doing those images. And for me and many other people, it was sort of like, man, what just happened? And it's still happening. And I remember, and in the middle of that, we're in a similar period now where lots of things are happening, but which makes me very nervous, okay? Because I'm waiting and watching, what am I going to read tomorrow morning when I get up?
Yeah.
In the middle of this blow up with Lehman and, all the other stuff, we're in the middle of an election. Oh, it's John McCain, who's definitely not going to be able to understand any of this. Okay, all he understands is where he wants to drop bombs. Yeah, and a guy named Barack Obama. Okay, remember that? Barack Obama being told, "Oh, he's a Harvard lawyer." Everybody's excited because we're going to have the first African American president.
Hmm.
Well, I'm not going to make things up. I'll tell you, I was excited too
Mm-hmm.
because I really knew that thing called the GOP, the Republican Party. I had enough of that. Forget it. You know, I don't know what we're going to do next, but like a lot of other people, including my mom and yeah, definitely my mom.
You fell for the hope and change?
Well, I don't say I didn't go for a hook, line, and sinker, but I was. Let me put it this way: I didn't think that Sarah Palin and John McCain was the solution
Right.
to our problems. I definitely
Right.
knew that they were not the solution to our problems. And all of a sudden, you know, this new product X shows up, or somebody says, "Hey, what about this?" You know, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know how things can get much worse than this. Of course, they've gotten much worse. I'm saying maybe we should give product X a chance and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have all the hoopla and everything else, all the celebration. I'm thinking, oh, a lot of people are happy about that. Isn't that great? They're happy. I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
We get past the inauguration and we're looking at who's being reappointed. I say, who's being appointed? Okay, we're going to have hope and change. Okay, keep the change because the people that he reappointed, and let's be frank, he had absolutely no idea. He didn't care. He didn't know because if if someone like me had to do all the homework and figure out what the heck was going on, he didn't have the time and the inclination, you know. So yeah, now we're being told keep the change again. There ain't going to be change, you know.
So
Look at who they're talking about. Look, yeah, this is a picture. This is a current picture. Okay,
yeah.
this is because, you know, nothing changes is the answer. Okay, we're being told, you know, we're going to have change, but nothing's going to change.
Well, so
Okay.
that brings me to the next theme I wanted to ask you about, which is the deep state.
Yeah. So I this phrase, the deep state, is another thing. You know, it's like I didn't make that phrase up. Of course I didn't. But when I hear that phrase and I'm looking at what's happening and it resonates with me, of course I'm going to look at what is meant by this because there are certain things that going way back when I was never comfortable about. In fact, the assassination of John F. Kennedy and then, you know, then his brother, you know, that was something that really scarred me. That's just 8 years old. But, you know, something like that. This was traumatic. A lot of other people experienced. And then there was, you know, Martin Luther King. I mean, you know, it's sort of, and I can't even remember the other things. But, you know, when that happens during the period of your life when you're really being influenced, okay, because you're a kid, it doesn't go away. It stays with you your whole life. You know, having to hide under tables and chairs regularly at school because people are saying that you're getting ready for fallout. What the heck is fallout? You know, this is an emotional scar that doesn't go away. It's not like maybe you can forget it and pretend. Everybody has something that happened. You know, it's that period of your life when things happen that you just don't forget. I don't like the CIA. I don't like the intelligence establishment. People say it's necessary. I say, you know, if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be involved in geopolitics, absolutely. You need to have good information. If you don't have good information, how can you make decisions? Does that mean that the leadership in our country has good information? The answer is absolutely not. Okay? Every time there's something that needs to be, you know, objectively, insightfully reported so that the people who run the country are supposed to be able to make good decisions, they failed. Not even going to get into the things that they did, which, the subversion and all the other stuff, the black ops and everything else, which is really just breaking the law as far as I'm concerned. I'm just talking about the simple function of providing good information. If they don't provide it, they miss everything. What did I say under here?
I'll have another Taiwan on and a double weeker.
Oh, yeah. So Taiwan, of course, I'm referring to Taiwan. I mean, why is she flying into Taiwan and just basically doing it because she thinks I'm going to get votes? Well, I know there are a lot of Chinese living in California. Maybe this is her base or part of her base or something, but, it's just she doesn't, see now. She doesn't understand how this is the reaction that's happening on the other side of the world. It's basically you're not poking a bear, okay? You're poking something. You're poking a dragon. Okay? You think they're going to just sit around and do nothing? And the question is, why? Why are we doing that? And the answer comes back to something called the deep state. What's the deep state, Bill? It's like you can't, it's sort of like Eisenhower was referring to this. People just say, "Oh, it's elitists." What are elitists? But the answer is that there is an ecosystem in our country, and they have their space that's very lucrative. Okay, and I'm not the one who came up with the phrase "war is profit." It's definitely true. They make their money, and they make more money when there's a big war. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
People
so
don't
all
like
these themes
wars.
start to cross over: the war party and the
Yeah.
deep state
People,
and crisis capitalism.
okay, we're basically run by cowards. If you go and figure out who is eager to send people, they're all, not all of them, but many of them are people who just basically never, one way or another, they were able to evade the very unhappy experience of actually having to go to war. Okay, I haven't myself, and I know it's an unhappy experience for different reasons. They don't care because they're on the payroll, clearly. And so that picture of the B-52 dropping bombs that are actually $100 bills, that's my idea. Okay, this was like a epiphany, not an epiphany because I suspected it all my life, but something inspired me to say, okay, now it's time for the picture, because I realized that, and you realize it now when you look at what's going on in the Ukraine and what's going on. Why are they, why is NATO trying to start trouble with China in this part of the world? And then what's going on in Israel? The people who make money from this, when you're dropping a bomb and it costs whatever, 10 million, 20 million, whatever, to buy that bomb, you're burning lots of money. Yeah. And so all of a sudden an opportunity, this crosses a lot of themes. That's really a loaded picture, but the guy's a comedian, right? But he's basically their man on the scene, right? He's doing what they're telling him he can do and what he can't do. He can't do anything on his own simply because if he does something on his own that they don't approve of, they're not going to give him the money. He needs the money. That's what it's about. People say, well, does he actually have a drawer full of money or a closet full of money or a villa full of money? Yeah, I'm sure he does, but it's not all the money. He doesn't have all that money. Where's the money going? The money's going to the bomb factory. The money never actually goes to him. Okay, most of the money that everybody reads about, the billions of dollars that keep getting spent, it never even leaves the country. It just gets routed to whoever, Raytheon or whoever, is they're on his man. We can't produce enough bombs anymore because there weren't enough wars to support enough of these arms manufacturers. So business has not been great for them. They've had to consolidate and restructure. Now they're at the point where they can't manufacture enough bombs to have another world war. They've got to basically tool up all over the place. So, yeah, and what's going on? What does that have to do with finance? They printed so much money that the only way that the money can be, circulated is if someone's dropping a $20 million bomb every 5 seconds. That's where we are. They, and people don't want to go to war. Okay, they're all eager to support the Democratic Party, which has now suddenly become the war party, which is shocking to me because even though I was always an independent, I never thought of I always thought of them as progressive and people who were more, anti-war in their orientation. Now suddenly they're the war party. This is the Clintons that did that. Okay, they figured out where the money was.
Yeah.
That's where they moved. That's where they moved their party. There she is. Yeah. Just so people understand, this is like my zombie period where I decided I was going to do everybody as a zombie, because everybody is always talking about zombies. It's okay, but everybody's talking about zombies. They're doing these primitive zombie pictures. Well, it's me. I'm not the first one who ever did a zombie picture of Hillary Clinton, who's really a hillbilly Clinton, is what I call her, hillbilly Clinton. So anyway, I did everybody as a zombie.
You did a whole series of zombies. Yeah.
She's the only zombie that I said, well, people will look at this as my zombie period because yes, collectively they are zombies. Yeah. They are people who feast on human, suffering and blood. Yeah, they're not interested in peace. They say we're interested in peace. Oh, that explains why. I don't remember what the exact statistic is, but someone, went back and tried to figure out in the history of the United States how many years were we actually not at war, and the answer to that question. Somebody wrote a book recently, in the last 4 years. Looked at this. I'm sorry, I can't give credit and say who it was, but the punchline was, we're never at peace. It's like the very few, if you look at the number of years and compare it to the number of years that we're at war. We are a country of war. You can't be.
It's feeling more and more clear, though, that the war that we're in now is actually turned on us. We're the enemy. The American people are at war with the American people.
Well, yeah, this is the next step. It's like you're not allowed to disagree with this. If you disagree with it, we're gonna hammer you down because you're not allowed to disagree with this. It's sort of like this is our goose that lays the golden eggs. Stay away, and that is how that you get back to woke totalitarianism. Those people who manufacture all these weapons. I mean, there's so many revelations that occur. It's just like amazing. They're not conspiracy theories. It's just like pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place. You're connecting the dots. And you realize it's like NATO. What is, the whole idea that NATO is a stockpile of obsolete weapons that we're basically able to pawn off on somebody else because we're not in a war that's big enough to use up what we got, right? That's what NATO is, okay? It's, you just shake your head and say, it's unbelievable what we're learning from this, Anyway, they don't care what the little people are arguing about. All this woke stuff, okay? And there he is, Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset. Sort of like, did he actually dress like that? I doubt it. But is the guy a freak? Yes, he is. He's definitely a freak. Does he dress peculiar? Yes, he does. Does he say peculiar things? Oh, he definitely does. And he ran amok during the pandemic. Some people call it the scamdemic. call it all kinds of things, but it was definitely planned.
Yeah.
And what happened was he made a mistake. He violated one of the old Chinese proverbs, which is you never show your hand, okay, to your enemies. You want your enemies to basically destroy themselves. And this guy he made the mistake of actually publishing their ideas.
You think that was a mistake? I think it was intentional.
Now go ahead. Why do you think it was intentional?
I think that they have a plan and they think it's the right plan and they want people to know. I don't think it was a mistake.
No, but the mistake they made was they laid it all out in front of everybody so that people could say, this is not a conspiracy theory. Sorry. This is what you're proposing. This is what you think we're going to, you're going to own nothing, right? You will own nothing and you will be happy. This is, and people, once you write it and publish it, you can't say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're making this up. It's a conspiracy theory. I said, well, really, this is really on your website.
But they just continue to tell us that this is the right way and this is going to save us. And if you
they still do,
disagree, then
I think they've suffered. I don't know how influential they are or they aren't, because they're definitely still there. They have suffered a decline in influence, because people are suddenly aware. It's not like they're operating behind the scenes or in the shadows or a little, it's like, it's not just these elitists who get in their private jets and fly, to this place in the mountains to meet where no one else is allowed to go and hear them talk. All of a sudden, I'm happy to say that a lot of the pictures that I did in the very beginning, and Max and Stacy, and Zero Hedge, we, in the middle of this, in the very beginning, right after, we had this financial crisis on Wall Street, we were all looking at that and listening to what these people were saying. Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon, these people all, Ben Bernanke flying to Davos to give their version of reality, and we're listening to it and saying, you're out of your mind. You think people are going to believe this? And so I started doing lots of satire and parody about the World Economic Forum. I said, this is just a joke. It's sort of like you're drinking your own Kool-Aid and you expect everybody else to drink it along with you. We're going to invite Bono and all these other, rock stars and celebrities who are going to, sprinkle magic dust on it and say, yeah, this is okay for everybody. And Dr. K, Dr. K, he's not a fad. He's like a guy who's been around forever.
Not anymore.
You showed the picture. Now I'm going to have to talk about Henry Kissinger a little bit. If you've read things that he's written and you listen to him talk, forget about what he is and his relationship to this thing that we call the deep state, and what his agenda was and who he was working for and who was financing him and backing him. There's one thing about him that you have to admit, is this is a guy who's got a brain. He's using his brain. He's a thinker who, you can't just say he's a lunatic. He's very, very crafty. And he's involved very deeply in creating these organizations like the World Economic Forum and the Council on Foreign Relations and the secret Bilderberg Group, which isn't really a secret, exists. There's something called the Bilderberg Group, and you look at who shows up there. It's the deep state and all their friends. So this is a guy who's really in the middle of a lot of things. Okay, yeah, he was in the middle of it. He wasn't Richard Nixon; it was him. Nixon basically, he's a politician who knows, I got to do this or I got to do that in order, to create my legacy of this. Go do it, Henry. Make it happen. He's the guy who makes it happen. He was the one who went, did the secret, plane visit to Beijing and met with Mao Zedong and Zhu Enlai, even though this crafty guy, him and the CIA, they tried to murder Zhu Enlai. It's this interesting thing that people don't know about. They tried to plant a bomb on his plane when he was on his way to Indonesia for a big meeting of the non-aligned, countries of the world. And for whatever reason, he didn't get on the plane. And the plane blew up somewhere over, the South China Sea. It's a close call. And that guy who they tried to murder and knew damn well, that they tried to kill him with a bomb, he's having dinner with Dr. Kissinger. You can find it in the books. I'm not making it up. Just read history books. And when this subject came up, when they're sitting there eating noodles or whatever, it's like the subject comes up, and they're able to basically glance at this subject, and Kissinger says to him, "You overestimate the capabilities of the CIA." He's saying, I don't, Chu Enlai really had a sense of humor. He really did. He was a funny guy. He made some remark, which wasn't, oh, you tried to bomb the plane. And he just made something that, then the inference was, I know what you tried to do. And his response to that was, you're overestimating the capabilities of the CIA,
Yeah.
So anyway, the interesting thing about him is when there's this guy, Mearsheimer, Professor Mearsheimer at University of Chicago, who's another guy who's got a really, really facile mind, who, he's, and when it comes to geopolitics, this guy knows, and he's been calling, I don't know what he's saying now about what's happened at Kursk, but his prediction that they're going to lay the Ukraine to waste and nobody, we're going to fight the Russians to the last Ukrainian. He was absolutely right about it. And when you read what he says about how we wound up in this situation where we have this now, there's different levels of war. You can have a big war, which is really a conflagration that destroys everything, which is really not what they want. They like these low-grade conflicts that just keep consuming
Simmers.
bombs. If we can have a situation where we can contain it, and it's dropping $20 million bombs every 5 seconds, hey, that's a great thing. This is like a money machine, right? Anyway, so you have someone like Mearsheimer, or who everybody says he's a genius. You can't just be a professor and have his position at University of Chicago by being a schlock, So you have people like that, and then you have Dr. Kissinger, who's a guy who they worship, this is, he's the eminence grise. He's the guy, he's the man. You got to go to him. What does Henry think? He's right there, Council of Foreign Relations. This is a guy who, even he was saying, this is a mistake what you're doing. And I say, shut him up, wheel him out, put him in the hallway, right?
We're doing it anyway.
This is not a good idea what you're doing. You should have seen this coming, and now we're at the precipice, and that's where we are now. They're actually, they're in Russia. They're using British hardware and what have you and know-how, basically poking the bear. I'm scared. If you think it's okay to get into an existential situation with a nuclear power, you're a lunatic. You're Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
That's who we have, Dr. Strangelove. Yeah, that's who's in Chicago right now. The War Party. Deciding what they're going to do next. They're in Chicago. The uniparty. It's not just the War Party. It's the uniparty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you see how all these things tie together, and it's sort of like I had my I was annoyed with what happened, with finance, and then suddenly, as I'm watching and the news and listening to other smart people talk about it and interacting and doing my own reading and making my own contribution, it's sort of like the thing is blossoming out or spreading, it's sort of like you're thinking, my God, there's no end to this. It's like creeping, into every, segment of our lives,
and it's all connected.
Except the part that they say, we don't care about that really. You can do whatever you want. That's what all this woke stuff's about. We don't care if who cares if you're transsexual? Who cares about abortion or, all these other things? They don't care about that. They tell people, oh, this is near and dear to our heart, but you go ahead and you take care of that because we're too busy building bombs. Yeah. As long as you vote, as long as we all vote the same way and keep each other in positions of power and no one can really change anything, we're all okay, right? Yeah. You want to open up the borders? Go ahead, open up the borders. Maybe we can draft those people that are coming across the border. It's disgusting. When this whole thing started in the Ukraine, I know I was one of the first ones to say, well, actually, it was even before Russia did what they did. I was worried about this senile old man having the codes. My dad, who I love very much, did not suffer dementia. He was lucid. I was having conversations with him all the way up till the very, okay? He made it as long, he was in his early 80s. And then, he fell. Hit his head. That's how a lot of people go. I wouldn't want him to be the president of the United States at that point.
Yeah.
There are certain industry professions where people know it's not a good idea for me to keep doing this after I'm 65 because I'm losing my ability. I'm losing my mental ability. I'm losing my physical ability to function well, and I'm endangering people by being in a position or presuming that I can be in a position where people are at risk. Yet here we have a guy who's obviously senile, okay, at the very beginning. And they're putting him in a position where if he does, they say, don't worry, you're going to tell me, don't worry, he doesn't have he doesn't have the codes, he doesn't have his finger on the red button or near the red button. I don't know who does. If he doesn't,
but then it's just another example of how the joke's on us as the American people. Yeah. They put someone in. He was democratically elected.
He's a feeble old man, according to the Justice Department, who cannot be prosecuted because he's just a feeble. He's feeble. He's senile. He's demented. It's like they wanted to cover that up. They certainly did. They got rid of it. They scrubbed it off, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like the briefcase with the red button in it. Where is the briefcase? Where's the briefcase? Is he the one? Is he the one? The feeble old man who we can't prosecute because he doesn't know where he is, or he doesn't have a good memory. It's obvious. So the question is, and people are asking, making posts now that don't get read unless they get put on Zero Hedge or somewhere else where people can see it. People are saying, well, the obvious question is, okay, he's not with it. He doesn't know where he is. He's not lucid. You're saying that he's not, obviously we saw what happened in that debate. They call it a debate. A debate. We see what happened. Who's got his pick? Who has the red button?
Yeah,
her?
That is the big question.
Does she have the red button? Have you ever? It's like they're telling us now that she's a geopolitical genius and she's able to handle this. I'm sorry. If you've looked at, she goes to ASEAN and, in Singapore or wherever and meets with these people and makes these statements that some intern handed her and said, here, say this. And people look at her and think, we need to be polite. We need to be polite wherever she goes, and it's like the old, they said there's an expression, laughter is a person's cry for help. This is a person who's laughing wherever she goes, not because she's a
Yeah.
happy person. Okay,
Yeah.
some people say that she's got an alcohol problem. I don't know, but she's under tremendous stress now because she's suddenly put in the role that she never thought she would get. And we, by the way, we don't know yet whether we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay, that's her. when they sent to the border, we don't need no stinking border. Let me just, now that you showed the picture, I need to say something about that. Mike, don't need to show the picture again. That's a funny picture. We don't need no. That's a great movie. Anyway, they want us to have open borders. Nowhere, I live in Hong Kong. I lived in England. I lived in lots of different places in the world. What's the first thing you need to do if you're going to go and live somewhere? Everywhere else in the world, I'm sorry, except maybe Britain, you need to have a visa. You need to have a visa that says that you can live there. And you need to have a work permit that says that you can work there and pay taxes and Social Security, whatever it is, right? Everywhere you go. But for some reason, someone now thinks that we don't need this anymore. These are the same people who think we need a Patriot Act. If we don't need the Patriot, if we don't need a border, why do we need a Patriot Act? We don't need to pay attention to what's coming across the border. We have so many, and we have more enemies now. When I say enemies, am I talking about countries, nation states? No, I'm talking about people who lost their brother or lost their daughter or their son or their wife and their family, completely destroyed. A lot of them are single men because they lost everything.
Hmm.
They're all being invited to come join us. You know, there is no, there's some people who are down there, basically with chewing gum and scotch tape, trying to manage the situation, but they know very well they can't manage the situation. They can't. We don't know. They've allowed all kinds of riffraff to come in. When I say riffraff, I mean people who are not coming in because they love the United States. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay. To get in. Why? So why do we need a Patriot Act to spy on everybody in the country? Okay, and to allow them to gather all the information, infringe on our privacy, and blah blah blah. Why do they need all these powers when they don't care what's coming across the board? That's what I'm going to say about it. I say I don't care, whether you're Chinese or Latino or this or that. I always agree. Let's face it. My mom was Japanese. She came in and said, "I believe in the land of opportunity." So it's not that I don't go for the land of opportunity concept. It's just that I think it's something that should be managed properly.
Yeah.
She had her
That's,
chance to try to manage it. Is this how she's going to handle everything? Yes, that's how she's going to handle everything. How does she handle it? Not well, as far as I know, because everybody wants to leave the minute they get hired by her. They realize what they're in for.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
so now she's in this situation where somebody is coaching her. First somebody said, "Holy shit! All the money that Joe Biden raised, we can't use that money if all of a sudden he withdraws. We got to keep her in. We got to run her, otherwise we're going to lose the money." Okay, she's hiding somewhere, like she's been doing most of the time, where she shows up at venues where she doesn't have to really say anything except what's on the punch card, and then
Yeah.
and
She
leave.
hasn't done any interviews.
She's never put herself in a situation where people can try to figure out what's going on, because nothing's going on is the answer. Suddenly she's being told, now you're going to have to be the front man. Right? Imagine what that's like. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. We're going to coach you. We're going to get you, don't worry. Everything, we're going to help. It's sort of like, wow. this is a situation that is very different from what we had before, because what we had before was this guy who, what is he able to do? Well, even though he's senile and demented, he's able to try to fill that kind of a role where he's basically Mr. Talking Head, right? And just doing what he's told and then going to the beach house, right? He's got a history behind him, right? Of his 50 years or whatever it was of hanging around down in, the U.S. Capitol.
DC. Yeah.
You try to list what his accomplishments were, and you just laugh, But one thing you're going to get if you're down there is you're going to talk the talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to.
You know how to shake some hands. Yeah.
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 So yeah, he's a guy who knows how to talk the talk. Even though he's getting rusty at it now. So he's able to take, the speech and fake his way through it, and people can tell him what to say or this or that. She's a different ball of wax. Forget, how are they going to get her to the point where she can do that for them? Because it's obvious they don't care what's up here. They don't care. They need an actor. They need an actor. So the question you asked is, what's important?
Well, yeah. So I said basically whoever wins the election in November, you're just going to have plenty of content to satirize next year. But what I was specifically kind of wondering is, are there any themes that that you're particularly interested in exploring? Things that maybe you haven't touched on yet?
This is going to be this is going to be a disappointing, but actually hopeful message. When I would rather just do my photography and share things with people. At the stage of my life, I just want to enjoy myself just like other people. It's sort of like when you look at who is blogging or writing or doing editorial type, publishing. In the beginning, they're very strong about it. They're really, it's like, this is my purpose. I gotta, this is what I'm doing, And for a brief window, it is. You're writing, you're doing appearances, and you feel very strongly about things. And these people, when I say people, I don't mean that negatively. You can't even say these people anymore without it, upsetting someone. Those folks, those folks reach a point where they just say, I gotta live. I got how much? I got 10 more years left. They're telling me that on average, I can survive to 75 if I'm a male. I got 5 years left. I'm going to waste my time trying to get people to, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, because something's going to happen and I won't even be able to do that anymore. I understand that mentality very well. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the answer is then, Bill, why do you do this? And this sort of this is like, makes me wonder, am I a lunatic? When I see what's going on, I'm never going to be someone who just says, I don't see what's going on. That is never going to be me. It's my curse, okay? I see what's going on, and naturally, if you have a brain and you see what's going on, it's going to upset you. And how do I cope with that? How do I handle it? Well, the answer is, when I'm sitting here looking at, when I make a picture like that and I put it up and people are reacting to it, and in the comment thread, and and I see it's resonating, that's relaxing.
Well, that's great.
Relaxing.
And we're so glad that you do it.
That's why. So is there something in particular that I want to, work on to get it? The answer is there is something that I like doing. And I really haven't had the time to do it online. Is I like to basically, I'm not a PhD. I have a few degrees, but And I don't want to do that. I don't want to say, oh, I got my PhD by teaching people. I like taking what seems complex, and in this context, what seems complex is history. I love looking at it. It's not I'm a historian. In fact, I hated history when I was in school. It was
Mhm.
boring to me. I like taking it and showing people how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Because only by understanding how we got to where we are can we, it's like, how can you get into a car and know where you're going if you don't know where you came from? I mean, like John Lennon
Mhm.
say, how can I go forward when I don't know which way I'm facing? It's sort of like, I like to sit with, or walk around, actually, I walk around with people and just talk to them and share with them what I was able to discover on my own and how lots of different dots connect. And I'm not even going to tell you what do you need to do. I'm not trying to proselytize people, inculcate them with anything.
Yeah.
I will, and I think that a lot of people when they meet me and they look at me and they say, "Who is this guy? He's got a ponytail. Is he a right wing? Is he left wing?" I say, "No, I'm just a person who, has experienced a lot of different things, seen a lot of things firsthand,
Mhm.
and it's not like I'm going to make observations without actually studying something to figure out. I'm a person who, and then I'm able to take things and distill them and simplify them, not because people are stupid, because I do believe in something called the 3-minute rule, which is if you can't explain something in 3 minutes, you're going to lose attention. And
Mhm.
people are going to, their eyes are going to glaze over. So you really need to be able to, and that's one of the reasons why images are very handy. But, for me, it's
Yes.
like if I'm walking around in the street and I can tell you what's happened, why we are. And so people think they're going to go with me on a tour, they get something that surprises them because I say, I just tell them, if you ask me what is the most important date for us, it's 1492. I start with 1492, and then people say, well, what did he do? He failed. He never got to Asia. He found the place where all the silver was. He got them to the place where all the silver was, and that starts the silver. People say, "What the heck
Mm.
is silver?" And this all ties into other. It ties into finance, it ties into armed capitalism, and all this, and it brings us all the way up to now because it hasn't stopped. That's what people
Yeah.
don't realize, and that's what I'm talking about: financial imperialism. People say, "Oh, we went through colonialism, and we even went through neo-colonialism, this or that." We see, now the world is the world. Do you think that those people who were, there you go again, those people, those folks, the people who benefit from these guys, do you think they've disappeared? No, they haven't.
Yeah.
So now
So
you don't have to send a boat with cannons around the world to impose their will, even though they do that for show. Okay? Now they're trying to do it with something called sanctions. What's that? It's financial. They want to engage in currency wars. They want to do things with debt. They want to seize assets, this and that. Okay, people aren't going there with a gun and fighting and throwing hand grenades anymore. They're trying to fight with financial weapons of war. Yeah,
mhm.
this is this financialization of war again, coming from
Yeah.
a different angle. So I just like to I do enjoy sitting down with people and discussing that. I enjoy it even more when I run into someone, and there are quite a few people you run into who actually are not clueless, who understand this. And then, of course, then you can have a really interesting conversation with people who've done their own research because then you're learning.
We're hoping that there'll be more and more people like that, and thanks to you, more and more people kind of opening their eyes and also having a laugh at the same time. So Yeah, we're extremely grateful that you came back to give us this encore performance, and we will be looking out for all the rest of your work.
Okay, my pleasure. Thanks again. Take care. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Bye bye. Bye, everybody.
Collapse Life is your guide to civilization and demise, and we're extremely thankful to all our guests like Bill and to our viewers who share their thoughts in the comments and pass these videos along to friends and family to help open more eyes. Please take a second to like and subscribe, and be sure to also find us on Substack at collapselife.substack.com. We are also on Twitter at collapse_life, and we have a Collapse Life store with a lot of great products, so you can check that out as well. Then head back here next week for another episode of this podcast. We'll be looking forward to seeing you. And until then, keep your chin up. It's only collapse. See you soon.